Hello and a warm welcome back to the Pitch Side podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSB. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable notifications to receive all the updates from these episodes of the Pitch Side podcast and all the content on the channel, of course. Listen on Spotify, Google Podcasts or any other platform and follow us on social media. Side PSB on Twitter, Pitch Side Pod on Instagram, and join us for this Champions League preview episode, part 2, episode 138, and you're welcome. So, on Tuesday, it was Real Madrid versus Chelsea at the Alfredo Stefano at Valdebebas, and it ended all square one, all between the two sides. This was definitely a game that was pretty open. It was more open than people expected it to be, at least in the first half in particular. I thought it was a game that showed the good and the bad from both sides. It really sort of illustrated what both coaches are good at, what both sides are good at, and what both sides are bad at, really. I thought Zidane management for this game was pretty weird. It was pretty wrong. The setup was not wrong, considering the injuries he had, the absences he have, the fact that he doesn't have a deep squad. He cannot really play. He cannot have the flexibility or the personnel to try and change this setup or try to play a setup that would actually suit him. It started with a 3-5-2 that was almost intended to mirror Chelsea's positioning on the pitch, because he knows that Tuchel ain't changing his side anytime soon. But that setup was applied in the wrong way. It was, on paper, it was a 3-5-2 that was supposed to give Real Madrid width. The fact is, they did anything but played wide. They played too central, I would say. They really gave Chelsea too much to work with. Definitely with the intensity that Chelsea were playing with in the start of the game in the first 20-25 minutes. Conte and Jorginho were really, really good in pressing Toni Kroos and Modric, not giving them the passing options that they usually have, because the last couple of ties for Real Madrid against Atalanta and Liverpool, that I think was the biggest problem for the two sides that faced Real Madrid, that they gave the likes of Luka Modric and Toni Kroos too much option and too much room to pass. Chelsea didn't give them that. Conte and Jorginho were pressing high. Mount and Pulisic were dropping back and, giving them the extra option to pass and helping them in that intense pressure. And that really made Real Madrid, feel sort of squeezed in the middle at somehow. They couldn't open the game. They couldn't stretch the game wide. Chelsea were really displacing themselves really well on the pitch. And, the thing is, the good point is about Chelsea, I thought they weren't just intense, they were pretty quick in their transition. They were just one-touch passes, and particularly on the left-hand side of Real Madrid's defence, where, surprise, surprise, there is Marcelo, who doesn't know how to defend. I'm sure that people know that by now. Chelsea were transitioning quickly, and it was clear for everyone, I think, that Real Madrid's midfield was clearly lacking athleticism, clearly lacking fitness from the games that they played, from the intense games that they had as of late. It was clear that individual battles were lost against the Chelsea midfielders. Conte in particular against Toni Kroos. I mean, he ran wild, Conte, yesterday. He sort of exuded all the confidence, all the athleticism, all the fitness that he has in the game yesterday. He was tremendous. He was Chelsea's best player yesterday. Again, the first half was more open than expected, I would say. Chelsea started really, really strong and could have gone 2 or 3-0 up by the first half an hour. Real Madrid were almost lost, really. They lose a lot of ball in the midfield. Whenever Chelsea found a transition or found time to transition, they found themselves quickly in the box for Real Madrid. They found themselves quickly in Real Madrid's defence because there was too much space between the midfield and the defence for Real Madrid. There was not so much cover, and definitely, again, with the lack of fitness affecting the way that Modric, Kroos and Casemiro have been running, Mason Mount had the time to control the game and to really pick up the spots that he wanted in those first 30 minutes. And in particular, the goal that Chelsea scored thanks to Christian Pulisic in the 14th minute. It was definitely a great pass from Rudiger, by the way, to break the defence completely. And it was unlike Chelsea, really. Like, the whole game, Chelsea were trying to break down Real Madrid, trying to be quick and penetrative. That pass was, was was a pretty big anomaly in that match. So break the lines, play a long ball. The first touch from Pulisic was amazing. I think Real Madrid's defense was shambolic. I thought they didn't go for it. They didn't go for the player. They went more to protect the goalkeeper or to close down the net or something like that. The defending was bad, and Christian Pulisic has enough skill, I think, in him to get past Courtois and round it up into the net for 1-0 against Chelsea. And after that, again, Chelsea had a couple of opportunities. Timo Werner had a couple of situations where he could have done better. His decision making is really off the chart at the moment in terms of being bad, that is. A couple of chances where instead of passing, he takes the shot, and instead of shooting, he passes. I mean, his decision making is still pretty weird, and we thought the goal against West Ham that he scored would probably, give him a little bit energy and allow him to take over in this game, but he didn't. And Real Madrid slowly got into the game, not exactly creating chances. I mean, they had, aside from the goal, I would say, there's only one real chance for Real Madrid for the whole game, really, which is Benzema's shot on the post. Quite appropriately, the goal was scored by Benzema, and the only chance Real Madrid had in the game, like realistically speaking, was from Karim Benzema. I mean, so certainly Real Madrid didn't realise that Chelsea are going to be this intense. Probably didn't realise that Chelsea are going to be this good at pressing, this good at building out from the back, really, which is something Real Madrid sometimes falter at. They build out from the back really well. I thought Real Madrid, lacked the sort of the options and lacked the choices, I would say. And Modric and Kroos were forced to do more work than usual with the lack of fitness they have. Kroos is back from an injury, really. And, Modric also has been back from an injury, and the natural abilities for him, physically and, intensity-wise in 35, almost 36 years of age, are really hard to come by. The second half was different. It was more cagey. It was more akin to the game we expected, the game we predicted, sort of, from Tommy Tuchel and Zinedine Zidane. And there was not a lot of chances created by either side, really. You feel that the momentum was swaying a certain way towards Chelsea, but definitely Real Madrid were trying to control the game a little bit more. They had more possession. They tried to sort of tame Chelsea down and, look for the options to pass up front. But definitely with Benzema being the only player that, gives him any sting up front, really, with, Vinicius not able to score, not having enough dribbles, not having enough penetrations in him, because Chelsea didn't give him the space. Simple. And with the 3-5-2 that Zidane has been playing, Carvajal wasn't helping as a wing-back, I think, either defensively or offensively, I would say. And on the other side, you have Marcelo. We all know that he can't have anything to give anymore to Real Madrid. He's really done. He's done. If you didn't believe it and you have any doubt in your mind that he's done as a player, for Real Madrid at the very least, you have to watch yesterday's game. He was completely outdone by Pulisic. He was completely outdone by Conte. He was completely outdone by Ziyech when he made his appearance in the second half. I mean, I think the only mistake that Chelsea made was the fact that they didn't start with Giroud. I thought Giroud would have given them so much focus up front, given them so much a focal point. Yes, Werner is good, he's speedster, he gives you good movement, he links up well for all of his finishing faults, and he missed a big one, I think, early on in the game. You cannot really start the game like this, looking for goals, looking for an away goal, without having someone like Giroud. Again, Real Madrid, I think, played in Chelsea's favour. They didn't lend themselves a good hand, and they helped Chelsea really well. The result itself, 1-1 draw, could favour Chelsea, could really give Chelsea the advantage, because that is, I think, the game is going to be managed on their own accord. The game is going to be managed on Chelsea's own terms. They will choose and they will try and set up the way they want to get the result they want to. Maybe they will look for a 0-0. And listen, we all know Real Madrid, being a possession-based side, doesn't really work sometimes. And listen, there's a difference between the midfield controlling the game and being a possession-based team. Real Madrid are not a possession-based team. When they get the ball, they don't look for creating chances. And certainly they didn't do that yesterday when they had the ball, particularly in the second half. I thought they didn't look to create. They didn't look to be enough of a force up front. They could have been, if they probably put a little bit effort into it, probably they would have created chances. Chelsea themselves were a little bit exhausted at the end of the game, the last 10 to 15 minutes. And with the substitutions that Tuchel made, the intention was to take the game back, to take the game at Real Madrid once again. But at the end of the game, I think Thomas Tuchel realised, well, I still have a second leg in London. I could manage the game there, so why am I exhausting myself here? And sort of Chelsea accepted the draw and were content for a draw. The thing is that Chelsea, walk out of this game with only one yellow card, and that is good. For Real Madrid, they walk out of this game with 4 players already on a yellow. And this is going to be dangerous because, they expect the second game, again, to be even slower than this one, particularly from a Chelsea point of view. They will not try to expose themselves. They'll probably try to manage the game, try to frustrate Real Madrid as much as they can, and then they will set up and look for maybe a goal. They snatch a goal, look for the 0-0, I don't know, but certainly this was a game that demonstrated everything good and everything bad about both sides, in my opinion. Chelsea, they had the intensity, they had the energy to press, but then a lack of clinical finishing from the couple of chances they had. Real Madrid, certain points controlled the game, but definitely the lack of depth in their squad, the potent threat going forward, aside from Karim Benzema, are really going to be hurtful, and it looks like it is, indeed, Benzema or no one up front. They will have Ramos back in the second leg, so that's going to be good news probably for them, but if they don't score up front, they will not make it, I would say. A good result for Thomas Tuchel, I would say. I think, considering the circumstances before the game, he would have taken it, but definitely the circumstances within the game, that's a better result for Real Madrid. That's a better result for Real Madrid, considering they could have lost it really 2 or 3-0. Overall, as to who go through, I think my prediction will go Chelsea. I would say Real Madrid, I think, exhausted all of that tank this season. They emptied the tank, I would say. They cannot have 90 intense minutes in them anymore, considering they still have La Liga to play for. And I don't think they're ready to sacrifice that anymore. I don't think that they're ready to sacrifice winning La Liga again for winning a Champions League. I know it's their competition and stuff like that, but I don't really see that happening. I see Chelsea going through, maybe with a 0-0 draw or even a 1-0 win at Stamford Bridge. We'll see what happens. Let's turn the page now and let's talk about the second game, of course, of the semi-final. It is PSG versus Manchester City. It is the money game, quote unquote. No pun intended, really. First of all, let me get this clear. This game might give the impression of an open game. People expecting a high-scoring, high-octane 4-3 or 5-3, akin to the Monaco-Man City game back a couple of years ago, I think in 2016 or whatever it was. But certainly, this is going to be a pretty cagey game as well. This is going to be tactical, probably even cagier than Real Madrid versus Chelsea for obvious reasons, because of the strength of both sides, who I don't think none of them want to open themselves up for the other. Clearly, I don't think that City would try and open themselves to the likes of Mbappe and Neymar, and as well as PSG would not open themselves to the likes of Kevin De Bruyne to find passes, and Riyad Mahrez running, and Raheem Sterling running, Gabriel Jesus and all of that, and Gundogan, and the dynamic formation that City have with no strikers that gives them a lot of dynamic nature, a lot of movement, and allows them to really penetrate the defenders. Unlikely enough in this game, it's PSG who enter the tie with stretched priorities, being second in the league, being involved in a really, really tight title race this season, with Lille up front at the very top with 73 points in their league, or 72 points in the League A. PSG second, and they have a really great battle in League A with 4 weeks only left in the season. It looks like, PSG will have to deal with both fronts, really. For the first time in a long while, really, they feel like they have to deal with both fronts really well. I think both, unlike Man City, who pretty much resting on their laurels in the league, they don't have any problem. They win the next game, they win the title regardless of results. Both sides, in my opinion, seem to favour a more realistic approach this season. We saw a different sides, I would say, from both teams. From Man City, favouring, I think, a pragmatic approach that gives them more solidity in the back. Certainly the signing of Ruben Dias was the difference maker really this season for them, a la Van Dijk with Liverpool back in 2017. It guaranteed them, I think, the most efficiency from few chances as possible with a new no-striker formation, although it looked like it hurt them at certain games, particularly I think the games against Leeds United in the league and Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final. On the other hand, though, Pochettino and PSG, even with the presence of the likes of Neymar and Mbappe, are not risking playing a high-octane game or a high-line or a possession-based style. Because they have certainly some differences and difficulties in the back. The problems that PSG have are really clear for everybody to see. They don't have fullbacks, in my opinion. They have so many problems in their fullbacks. The absence of actual fullbacks. Florenzi have been tested with COVID and injured before that. You have Kurzawa, who didn't play most of the season. They're relying on Barker, and Michel Barker has been relying on Diallo, a makeshift left back, moving from centre half to left back position, and filling in with Danilo Pereira at centre half. And and Thilo Kehrer, we all know, and you all know my opinion of Thilo Kehrer. I don't really rate him. I don't think he's a great player anyway. So it definitely will be a battle of individual mistakes. I would say the team is going to make mistakes first. The other team is going to be jumping on them, using the quality they have in their side. It's not going to be like an open game and both sides are going to go for it. I'm going to see a 7-6 or something like that. I don't think it will happen. I think Guardiola became too pragmatic for this, but definitely he might overthink it. He might overthink this game. And if there's anything he would do, and if there's any game he would overthink in, it might be this one. Because thinking of having to deal with Neymar and Mbappe and Di Maria and their explosive nature, this might put him into a position where he would think of what to do. And listen, Guardiola is a great coach, by the way, when he puts his simple philosophy of tiki-taka into practice. Like, seriously. He plays the basics of the tiki-taka. When he tries to innovate almost to the detriment of himself, he tries to innovate really to the detriment of himself, to the squad, to the team that he plays in, and that's, I think, why he failed with Bayern Munich and failed with Man City so far. So they passed that hurdle, they passed that point of quarterfinal where they seem to fail in the last couple of years. Guardiola, I think, looking for vindication for himself. City looking for vindications for themselves as a team that has been touted as favourites to win the Champions League for the last 3 to 4 seasons, really, and they didn't do it. PSG as well, past the point of really being afraid of this kind of competitions because they've been to the final now, and this season, if they get to the final and they win the competition, this is going to be the ultimate vindication for PSG, because last season they'd had a terrible sort of path to the final. Terrible in the sense that it was pretty easy in the end. You look at the sides that they faced in the round of 16 in the quarters. They played Dortmund, they played Atalanta, they played Leipzig, and not necessarily the biggest of sides. And people almost jumped on them, really, saying that they were lucky to get to the final. And in my opinion, they did. Particularly against Atalanta, they were really lucky to get a goal in the 90th minute to equalise and then win in the end. So definitely PSG now past that final hurdle of getting to the final. Now they need to go one step more, and to go one step more, they need to be as realistic as possible. Again, this is going to be a vindication season for them, probably, if they win the Champions League. Look at the teams they played this season. You played Barcelona, you played Bayern Munich, and you played Man City, and the final, you have the potential to play Real Madrid or Chelsea, and that's going to be a hard game regardless of the opponent. So this might be the most merited Champions League win in the last 3 or 4 years, realistically speaking, I would say. Because, in my opinion, PSG have enough in them to get past Man City. I know, Man City might have enough advantage because they seem rested, they seem like they did the rotation perfectly. Guardiola doesn't have to think about the league, already won the Carabao Cup, he's out of the FA Cup, so he only has the Champions League to think about, to focus straight ahead, looking to that Champions League game against PSG. The key battles in this one, I think PSG's attack, the potent and omnipotent attack of Neymar, Mbappe, Di Maria, maybe Adam Moiskin in the second half potentially, versus City's fullbacks, and particularly whoever's going to play on the right-hand side, because you expect them to face Mbappe most of the time. And if that is, and whatever it is, it will be a hard time for him. It will be either Walker, João Cancelo. If it is João Cancelo, that is your game dead, I think, for Man City, because if it is João Cancelo, the guy naturally doesn't know how to defend. Like, Walker is good, but he has the odd mistake in him. However, João Cancelo is, not the full package defensively. He's not the full package defensively. He doesn't give you the same amount of cover that Walker would give you. Most of the times, again, it would be a terrible night for whoever going to be on that right-hand side facing Mbappe most of the times and trying to deal with his speed and trickery. Also, there'll be the midfields. Man City, we'll see how they're going to be dealing with this one. We'll see how the midfield for PSG is going to be set up, with the availability of Verratti and Paredes and Idrissa Gana Gueye and Herrera. If he's looking to hold City down, I would say he would start with Ander Herrera, Paredes, and Verratti, the three of them, because you expect Man City to be more in possession in the game. So when you lose possession, and when Man City lose possession, PSG need to be as good in transition as possible. So I think Paredes, Verratti, and Idrissa and Ander Herrera might really be the best option. Ander Herrera providing the intensity and the pressure, and then you have Verratti and Paredes really good in taking the ball out and building out to give Neymar, Mbappe, and Di Maria the final ball up front. This game should be defined on little details, really. It could be defined on the lack of concentration Man City have sometimes, the individual mistakes in the back for the likes of John Stones, in particular if he plays. Also, the way that they sometimes go too high and expose themselves for PSG, and if they do that, I think they're going to be killed, just like PSG were against Bayern. They don't mind playing on the counter. We saw that against Bayern in the quarterfinal. They don't really mind playing on the counter, do they? They like to find spaces in the back, and they like to exploit them with the speed and trickery. If the finishing doesn't let PSG down, they could be in for a good night if they find some spaces behind Man City's defence. Which is the same thing, I think, for Man City. If they found spaces behind PSG's backline, with the absence of Marquinhos going to be a big factor, I think, in this one. Yes, Kimpembe's really good. He's really good, and I rate him high. But I don't think he has enough leadership like Marquinhos. Still has a bit of mistakes in reading the game. His judgment might be a little bit bad sometimes, and you don't want that against the likes of Mahrez and Sterling and Jesus and De Bruyne coming at you with the replacement. They have the likes of Ferran Torres still to come also in the second half potentially if he doesn't start. And I don't really think he will start. I think Riyad Mahrez might be the best option to start. So definitely, this is a game that's going to be played on some details in it, on small details in it, and I don't think it will be that open, although we'll see goals. I'm sure we'll see goals. Maybe we'll get ourselves an open game. We'll get ourselves an open game here. I don't predict it, really. I don't expect it to be that open as people would think it is, or basketball, football, quote unquote. But I think it will be open enough for us to enjoy it, and will be open enough for us to really enjoy it and get a little good look at Man City and PSG, at two of the favourites of this season's Champions League. I predict a 2-2 draw, I would say, and or a 3-2 win for PSG. Surprisingly enough, I really think that Man City are going to be the ones in possession. They're showing quite the signs of backing down as of late. The defensive mistakes in particular are creeping in a bit in the last couple of games, also in the Premier League. So you really falter Man City really here. You expect them to falter at certain points, and if there's any team to pounce on them really well, it might be just PSG this season. We'll see what's going to happen and who's going to be the team to vindicate the vindicate themselves in the Champions League. Thanks for watching / listening. That was from me, the HOD of the PSP, for this episode. Like, share, comment on the YouTube version of this podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, enable notifications to receive all the updates. Follow us on social media site PSP on Twitter, Pochettino on Instagram, and Spotify, Google Podcast, or any other platform. Listen to the podcast there. And until next time, I'll be seeing you soon. Goodbye.